Okay, y'all, so let's get into this breakdown of John chapter 10. Let's start with the chapter context. So starting in chapter 7, the Gospel of John describes Jesus' preaching at the Feast of Booths in Jerusalem. Through chapter 7 and 8, he debates with critics in attempts to explain spiritual truths. On the way out of the city, Jesus gives sight to a man born blind, as shown in chapter 9. That begins an extended debate which continues in this chapter. Jesus gives analogies of his mission using shepherds as a theme. Okay, now, months later, he repeats those ideas when cornered by an aggressive mob in the temple. This sets the stage for his grandest miracle, the raising of Lazarus, seen in chapter 11. Oh, it's about to get good. It's about to get good. Okay. So let's get into this breakdown, part 1. Chapter 10 continues uninterrupted from the end of chapter 9. In fact, all of chapters 7, 8, and 9 in the first half of chapter 10 occur in a nearby continuous timeline. At the end of chapter 9, Jesus was debating those who objected to his giving sight to a blind man, to a man born blind. I need my coffee to kick in. John chapter 9. As this chapter opens, Jesus is still speaking to those critics and attempting to explain the truth. Jesus lays out 3 analogies in the first half of this chapter. These are all centered on shepherding, a topic with which his audience would have been familiar. These teachings are all separate. They carry slightly different symbolism, and slightly different implications. Along the way, Jesus also makes the 3rd and 4th of the 7 I am statements found in this gospel, where he stakes a claim to divinity. This chapter makes clear, yet often disputed, statements about the doctrinal questions such as salvation through means other than Jesus, if salvation can be lost, and whether the Bible contains error. First, Jesus points out that sheep only listen to the voice of their own specific shepherd. Come on now. They won't listen to a stranger. Spiritually, this explains why men like the scribes and Pharisees don't accept Jesus. They are not part of his flock. In prior discussions, Jesus noted that these men are ultimately subjects of the devil. John 8:42 through 47. They don't listen to the voice of God because they are part of some other flock. Unsurprisingly, Jesus' detractors don't get the point. John 10:1 through 6. The second analogy is brief but carries enormous implications. Sheep pens of that era were constructed with high walls and a single narrow opening. This was the only legitimate means of entry or exit. Jesus noted in this first analogy, to control access, the gatekeeper would stand or lay across the opening. He would physically serve as the door, and Jesus claims to have the same role spiritually. Yes, he does. He is the door. The one and only means by which the sheep can enter in the pen and find rescue from harm. This is the 3rd of the 7 times in the gospel where Jesus uses the unique I am phrasing, echoing the statement made by God in Exodus 3:14. The world, like sheep, can be divided into 2 groups, those in and those out, as defined by the door, which is Christ alone. John 10:7 through 9. Finally, Jesus refers to himself as the Good Shepherd. This contrasts to the false religious leaders of Israel. He especially notes his willingness to die for the sake of the flock. Hired hands and employees only care for sheep until faced with personal risk. When in danger, they tend to run away. Unlike those false leaders, Jesus is willing to sacrifice himself to save those who he protects. In comparison, once again, Jesus uses the I am phrasing. This is the fourth time in the Gospel of John where he highlights that theme. His statement also makes it evidence that those who are saved by faith in Jesus are saved permanently. Come on. They cannot be lost. John 10:27-30 by any means. John 10:10-18. As expected, Matthew 10:34-36. These teachings cause further arguments. Still today, the permanence of true salvation and the exclusivity of Jesus are among the many points of sharp disagreement between Christianity and the world. Among the crowd listening to Jesus, some dismissed Jesus as insane for preferring their own traditions over the evidence of the miracle. I was just talking about that. Others properly recognize Jesus as proven signs that can only be divided. We are not told how these debates end. John 10:19-21. John's Gospel then jumps ahead several months to the Feast of Dedication. This is not a mandatory feast, but Jesus chooses to attend. Modern people know this celebration as Hanukkah. Oh, okay. While in Jerusalem, Jesus is cornered by an angry mob of religious leaders in an enclosed part of the temple grounds. They challenge Jesus to repeat his teachings, then attempt to stone him. In response, Jesus points out that his words are in line with Scripture. Okay. He notes his miracles ought to influence how these men respond. In doing so, Jesus also makes a clear statement about the perfection of the Bible, the doctrine of inerrancy. Okay, those appeals are ignored again, and Jesus makes an unspecified escape. John 10:22-39. I gotta write that one down. Hold on, y'all. After this, Jesus leaves the region controlled by Jerusalem's religious leaders. He returns to Perea, where John the Baptist once preached. The people there are much more receptive thanks to John, and many believe. John 10:40-42. This sets the stage for Jesus' most spectacular miracle, the raising of Lazarus, described in chapter 11. After this, Jesus will return to Jerusalem in the triumphal entry to deliver his last public statement before his arrest and crucifixion. As seen in chapter 12. Alright, y'all, I'm not going to try to squeeze this next part in 1 minute, but come back for part 2.